Good morning. My name is Constable Andre Johnson, a Public Information Officer with Waterloo Regional Police Service. Thank you all for being at our police headquarters this morning. I'm here to introduce Chief Brian Larkin, who will provide an update on Project Peace. Chief?
Thanks so much, Andre, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the media. And thank you for taking all your time from your busy schedules to join us today at police headquarters. So once again, I want to recognize everyone and thank everybody for attending today for your coverage on Project Peace. And we'll talk about the excellent project and excellent investigative work of our team over the next few minutes. But we really want to provide you some insight and an update on the investigation. The investigation spanned over a 4-month period, and it focused on illicit and illegal drug trafficking, as well as the increased violent crime activity that has affected our region in recent months. And in particular, this project focused on illegal activity in the city of Cambridge. Investigative strategies were developed, so we were able to target those involved in the illicit drug trade within the city of Cambridge, which also results in violence that so often accompanies this. And you know, you've heard us talk often about the drug subculture. The drug subculture often involves intimidation, extortion, and violence. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with, not only across the region, but in the province of Ontario and beyond. Over the past year, our region consistently tracks and monitors crime and trend patterns, and there's been a significant increase in firearm-related incidents in the city of Cambridge, as well as across the region. And our investigative division has been very much focused on the attention of these increased crimes. A number of investigators from our Drugs and Firearms Unit, our crime analyst team, our intelligence analysis, as well as support from the intelligence unit, as well as general investigators and detectives were dedicated to this project. And it was a very specific targeted project. And again, want to recognize and thank a number of involved members from our drugs and firearms teams, our criminal intelligence unit, general investigations, which focused on the criminal activity in the city of Cambridge. And Inspector Fenton is here, and want to recognize his leadership and his team for coordinating a lot of the significant work that transpired. The investigation resulted in 9 search warrants being executed over the 4-month period. 8 of those were in the city of Cambridge, 1 of those in the city of Kitchener, and in total, the investigation resulted in the arrest of 30 individuals, as well as 68 criminal code charges, 41 Controlled Drugs and Substance Act charges, and 6 provincial offenses. And that is simply fantastic police work. It's an excellent outcome and will have a significant impact on the disruption of illegal drug activity in the city of Cambridge, as well as throughout our region. The following items were seized as a result of Project Peace. A number of them are on display for you, but I want to highlight the reality of what we seized and the reality of what is transpiring every single day in the city of Cambridge, as well as across the region of Waterloo and beyond. 4 firearms: a .40 caliber Glock semi-automatic pistol with a prohibited 20-round magazine, a Churchill 12-gauge 3-inch Magnum shotgun, a Smith & Wesson 38 caliber revolver handgun, and an older revolver. And you'll see those on the table next to us, including 3 imitation firearms. And if you look at the imitation firearms, it is very challenging and difficult to see the difference between a real firearm and an imitation firearm, which poses significant risk not only to the public, but puts our police officers in a very precarious position when they're dealing with these individuals. 427 grams of fentanyl seized, 2 syringes of liquid fentanyl seized, 156 grams of methamphetamine, 39 grams of cocaine powder, 1,100 pills, including hydromorphine and other controlled substances, 2 drug presses, which again, the Ontario and Canadian chiefs have been advocating to control drug presses as they're used to produce illicit and illegal drugs. 1 conducted energy weapon, which is a prohibited weapon. 1 expandable baton, which is a prohibited weapon. 4 prohibited knives. 40 rounds of ammunition. 1 crossbow. Counterfeit currency, and $12,000 in Canadian crime currency. The total street value of drugs seized during this investigation is approximately $140,000. And again, that is a significant disruption to the street trade. And I want to highlight year to date that the excellent work of our drugs and firearms teams and across our organization, we have seized more than $630,000 street value of illicit drugs. And that's simply, again, I want to highlight the great work of our frontline and our investigative teams. Naturally, the number of weapons, ammunition, and illegal drugs that were seized during this investigation is concerning. And it ought to be concerning to us. It ought to be concerning to our community. I speak about this time and time again. Our region has a significant addiction issue. Our province has a significant addiction issue, and our nation has a significant addiction issue. And of course, that leads, and many tentacles lead to crime, public disorder, but a myriad of social issues and social challenges. And so I want to assure our community, as you see here today, that our team, that our investigators are serious, they're committed, they are dedicated, and they want to bring resolution to these crimes. They want to disrupt the illicit drug trafficking networks in our region. They want to limit the amount of other damage done in our communities. But the reality is that we simply cannot arrest our way out of this challenge. The police service cannot do all of it. We need support. We need a strong infrastructure of social services. We need a strong infrastructure of public health. We need a strong education system. That's the reality, is that we need a collaborative community approach, and that is exactly what we're doing in Waterloo Region. We also need all levels of government investing, working together, and funding the significant challenges that our community faces. Over the last number of years, there's been an increase in criminal activity in the Greater Toronto Area, in Southern Ontario, and within our region. Much of it related to the illicit drug trafficking network, street gang activity, organized crime, and hence the use of illegal firearms. Recently, we've heard from the federal government and the province of Ontario announcing plans to address these issues through a number of funding and operational issues that will come available in April of 2020. We have to recognize that individuals involved in this criminal activity do not necessarily respect geographical boundaries, and hence we see an increase in violent and nonviolent crime in the region. But I want to be clear, the people that we arrested involved in this investigation are all based out of the city of Cambridge, with the exception of 2 Kitchener residents who would traverse into Cambridge to conduct their illegal business. And I want to talk a little bit about our region and the crime increases that we've seen year over year. Over the last 12 months, we've seen a violent crime increase of 15%, which really takes us back to around 2008 levels of crime. Property crime has increased by 6%, and of course the totality of crime has increased by 6%, which takes us back to almost 10 to 11 years of where we were sitting in the late 2000s. And again, you know, those are concerning pieces. We're working very hard to drive that number down, but there are many impacts: demographics, socioeconomic status, social disparity, poverty, and homelessness that are all impacting a number of those pieces. And so again, we have to work collaboratively as a community. On a recurring basis, our police service continues to make a significant number of arrests, warrant execution, drug and weapon seizures, which are often related to the illicit trafficking of drugs and organized criminal activity. And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. In fact, we've never had such a collaborative, excellent arrest rate, seizure rate, and yet we know that the problem continues to amass itself and continues to grow. Year to date, from January 1st to September 4th of 2019, to give you some insight, we have seized 252 firearms, and those involve, you know, family violence incidents, other types of public safety seizures, warrant executions. But in totality, we've actually have taken 621 firearms into our possession. Many of those either found and or turned over to police for destruction. This year, year to date, we're more than 30 Controlled Drugs and Substance Act warrants executed across the region. And if you look at our seized drugs, just over 650 grams of fentanyl. And again, that may not seem like very much. You know, we're used to talking about kilograms and kilos when we dealt with cocaine and cannabis and other types of drugs. But that is a significant amount, and every gram of fentanyl is lethal. Every gram of fentanyl is fatal. So when you look at, from our police service, again, more than 7,500 grams of cocaine, crack cocaine, fentanyl, carfentanil, other drugs, more than 1,300 pills, illicit pills seized, speaks to the ongoing daily work that we're doing, but it also magnifies the challenges that we're facing. In many ways, as we make progress, somebody else comes in and fills that void. We continue to work in close coordination with other police services across Ontario. I think it's very important to collaborate our strategies related to drug trafficking, the trafficking of weapons, the trafficking of humans, as well as focused on gang and organized crime activity in our community. As I alluded to, that we can't do this alone. We will never arrest our way out of this issue and these challenges. It has to be a collaborative approach as we move forward. And so we encourage people to continue to call us. I just want to highlight, as we look year to date and some of the challenges that we're facing and continue to discuss, 48 overdose fatalities in our region, which are up from 31 at this time last year. In comparison, we've had 13 road fatalities, which is up from 8 last year. As of August 15th, our service has responded to more than 585 overdose calls, up from 376 calls to our service at the same time last year. And in this project, I want to highlight that out of the 30 people arrested, we arrested 9 females, 21 males. The ages range from 17 to 59, which once again is an indicator that illicit drug activity does not discriminate. It rolls across all demographics, all genders. 2 males from Kitchener and 28 are from the city of Cambridge. All arrests were in connection to criminal activity conducted in Cambridge, and the arrests have had a direct impact on the illicit drug activity in the city of Cambridge, as well as significantly disrupting networks across the regional Waterloo. And so I want to thank all of you for your time today around Project Peace, and I do want to end with recognizing the incredible work of our investigative teams. This 4-month project was intensive, included a lot of significant operational issues and challenges. Again, dealing with covert operations and other work that we do, very targeted on the city of Cambridge with tentacles across the region, and that can only be done with passionate people. And I often talk about this, that our greatest asset is our people. We're in the people-driven business, and you can see that there's an overall significant commitment to dealing with some of the challenges we face. But we are doing our part, and we have to work collaboratively for everybody to do their part. So I want to thank all of you. Very pleased to open it up to questions and inquiries from members of the media. So thank you for being here. Laura?
Why focus on Cambridge?
Well, it was really around the significant increase we were seeing. And so monthly we monitor crime. We monitored crime trends and patterns. We had some information around a significant network of drug trafficking in the city of Cambridge, and hence we wanted to turn our lens to the city of Cambridge. The reality is the 3 homicides that we've had this year in the region are all within the city of Cambridge. They're dealing with some significant challenges and issues that are very well publicized, and we felt that it was appropriate for us to target and invest resources in the city of Cambridge. It does have tentacles to other parts of the region, but obviously we wanted to ensure that we were very much focused on the activity and the increased crime in the city of Cambridge.
What's the concern with the firearms that you're finding in these?
Well, it's really the propensity, when you look over the last decade and you look at Statistics Canada and the way that we track crime, and you're seeing this significant increase. We're dealing with a generation, a decade ago, it wasn't that a firearm may not have been displayed or shown, but we're dealing with a propensity of a generation that's not afraid to use them. And so when you look at the incidents, year to date, 15 shootings across the region, but you look at the times of the shootings, one in the city of Kitchener in a very public place at 5:30, one in the early morning hours in the city of Waterloo in a heavily populated, commercialized entertainment area. Those are causes for concern. And so the question, we need to look at is what is our, where do we go as a police, a public safety network around controlling illicit firearms, controlling legal firearms? Canada has a very robust, firearm legislation and firearm laws, but this is a concern. It's also a concern from the work that we do as police officers. So our police officers stop vehicles, they stop individuals, they execute warrants, and this is what they're faced with now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, a seizure of a firearm was pretty significant. It's a weekly occurrence now. If we historically look at the 30 controlled drug and substance warrants that we executed this year, in all of those warrants, there's a firearm, there's a weapon, and it speaks to the subculture, the drug culture that is one built around violence, intimidation, really strong presence of weapons. And what we're seeing, really across the Greater Toronto Area, including our region, is the willingness to use them. And that ought to be cause of concern for all of us, which is why the upstream prevention, the work in the education system, the work in the social system, the work with family children's services is all important. We can't get so focused on the reactive side of this. We do have to react and deal with issues, but we can never lose sight of the investment in the proactive work and the upstream work so that we don't get to this level. There's a lot of work to be done.
And where the guns coming from?
Well, that's, we trace all of that's the magic question. We trace all the firearms. Obviously some of the firearms are difficult to trace because the serial numbers have either been grinded or destroyed, or they've been, pieced or parted together. But if you look at the data and you look at sort of Stats Canada findings, 50% are generally coming through the border, coming from the United States. The other 50% are local firearms that are either stolen in a break and enter, or, exchange hands, through a sale, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a 50-50 approach as we look at this, and that's why the Canadian Chiefs are very much looking at firearm legislation. Are there areas that we need to enhance? There are other areas that we need to change, and we're having a massive discussion across the nation with Canadian Police Chiefs and Public Safety Canada around how do we actually manage this, because at the heart of it we have very strong firearm legislation. There need to be some enhancements or tweaking. Time will tell through further research, but that's one of the key pieces. And we also have to recognize that obviously when you look at the amount of people that cross our border every single day, there's significant impacts on all of our infrastructures. And so how do we manage it and move forward?
You were talking about funding coming in April 2020, and we know that there was some funding cuts this year. How have those funding cuts impacted your ability to do that proactive work?
Yeah, so our service, we're still awaiting what our overall funding is for this year from the provincial government, but we are aware that we're about $1.4 million short. And I'll tell you very directly, that funding impacts our front line. It was funding, quite frankly, boots on the ground, but it was also funding a number of members who work in our drugs and firearms. It was a funding through Provincial Anti-Violence Intervention Strategy, where we had a number of members that were funded. Our Police Services Board has agreed to continue to fund that through our current budget because it's important, it's necessary, and I'll continue to advocate for more funding for our region. I do not believe and I do not think that our region and our police service is getting its fair share of provincial funding. I believe that we need more, I believe that we deserve more, and I believe our community deserves that. And hence my advocacy and very strong position. We're the 10th largest community in Canada. And with that comes the 10th largest community issues. And so we have to recognize that we need to change and invest in policing and public safety, much like other large communities. And so, we haven't seen what the funding criteria will be for April 2020. We know that it's focused on guns and gangs and the illegal drug trafficking. And I believe that, Inspector Fenton's been given the task to make sure that we have a number of shovel-ready projects. There's a lot of work to be done out there. We know and we actively track. We have a risk assessment. We have a matrix. We're very sophisticated. Our team does amazing work behind the scenes. We're very sophisticated in who is responsible for the crime. But the analogy, and I don't want to make this any different, but the analogy I'll use is we all have to-do lists. And you work your way through the to-do list. Our to-do list is pretty significant, but we have limited resources. We have, also a limited number of the ability to go out and do different work. These projects are complex. They often involve covert operations. They involve other investigative techniques that take time. And so we don't, there's no quick fix. There's no magic wand. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the actual provincial funding for April 2020 means, and we'll be very focused on advocating for our fair share. It's needed. It's required. in my view, delaying it to the next budget cycle is not wise, because we have significant challenges today, and we need to deal with those issues today. And I always find in policing or in public safety, when you lose a little bit of ground, it's very difficult to make that ground up. And obviously, we're trying to drive crime down and deal with those issues.
And a couple weeks ago, there was funding announced, particularly for the GTA Hamilton Field. Did Waterloo Regional Police benefit from that at all?
So we will, that is the funding that we're talking about. So that funding will be April 2020. And although, you know, our community wasn't specifically named in that funding, we will have access to that funding. We will be able to apply for funding. And rest assured, we will be working to ensure that we get our fair share of that monies that are allotted through a provincial and federal grant. So it's a two-tier grant.
And what does that look like for you? Like, are you having these conversations with just the MPPs, or are you able to talk to the ministers about what this is, or are you going through like the Ontario chiefs of police?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a combination. Clearly, I meet with our local MPPs. Obviously, with our regional chair and our police services board chair advocate. And the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police is very engaged in this dialogue, and I'm a big part of that association, and so I've had direct conversation with the minister around funding for our service and advocating for our community and our service, because I believe it goes beyond just policing. We need investment in other areas. The federal funding has money for upstream prevention, which I believe is an important part of a strategy. You know, we just can't have a law enforcement strategy. We just can't have a policing strategy. If we want to solve these issues, we need a community-wide strategy. And so we have to change the way I consistently say, take a collaborative approach. And we do that really well in Waterloo. If you look at the work we're doing around the regional drug strategy, it's very collaborative and very focused. And so we'll see what the details will always set out how we can apply for the funding, and we've yet to see those. But yes, I'm having all of those discussions and continue to have all those discussions because I believe that that's part of my responsibility, is to advocate and to influence the redirection of monies to our community.
Is that frustrating for you and your officers, though, to sort of be in that limbo, to not know funding-wise what's going to happen?
Well, I think, we have to recognize that all of us have financial and fiscal pressures. Our service is no different. My message to the officers is continue doing the great work you do every day. Let me worry. My responsibility is to worry about budget, financial strategy, and advocacy with the government. That should never impact them. I would describe myself as I'm the umbrella. My job is to keep them focused on doing their role, and I'm the one that gets wet dealing with those issues, and I'm the one that should be doing that, and our team should be doing that in collaboration with the Police Services Board. But our members are doing great work. This is a highlight. There's no frustration here. These are people that love what they do. They love their job. They're passionate about making change. They're passionate about arresting people and seeing the judicial system go. I think, beyond all of this is that we're not focused here. If you look at what we're doing here, we're focused on drug traffickers. We're not focused on the user. The user is a health issue. We're focused on navigating that individual into the health system, but we're focused on targeting on those that are preying on the vulnerable. And much of the drug culture is really driven by greed, money, entrepreneurship. That's what it is. And it's a risk reward. And our message is pretty clear. We are going, don't worry, we'll reward you. We will find you, and we'll continue to exercise everything we possibly can to target drug traffickers.
Is this something that the public should be bringing up with? We've got a federal election on the near horizon, so I guess public safety is something you can never stop advocating for. They're more attentive every 4 years, so from my perspective. But this is something that if the public can do anything, keep calling when they see things suspicious, and talk to their members of parliament.
Yeah, I think, obviously, policing, much of policing is governed provincially through provincial government, but federally, obviously, is responsible for criminal code legislation, hence our dialogue with Public Safety Canada around firearms. We're having a discussion with Health Canada around drug policy and where we're going as a nation, and how do we tackle the opiate crisis and those types of processes. Those are all important things. I'm a firm believer that all levels of government need to work together. We need to collaborate. This is a pretty complex issue. And I'll speak a little bit to the challenges we're facing, and they're very visible. If all of us pause for a moment and reflect on what we're seeing in our community, we are seeing, quite frankly, more homelessness. We are seeing more people asking for money at street corners and at boulevards. We're seeing our trespassing rate, and citizens that are calling in to complain about people trespassing we're at about 6,000 calls per year. And at the heart of that trespassing call isn't necessarily unlawful activity or unlawful behavior, it's homelessness. They have nowhere to go. And so, if you travel with me early in the morning, in some of our core areas of the city, what you'll see at 5:30 and 6 in the morning is people packing up who have been sleeping overnight in a vestibule and picking up their belongings that they have. And hence why, my firm belief is a much broader strategy, because we're not going to arrest our way out of that. And particularly, I'll speak very direct to the issues in the city of Cambridge. We have some challenges. We've had crime challenges. We have concerned citizens. And quite frankly, we have some people that believe the police are not doing enough. These things take time, but evidence from this is some significant police work, a significant investment in resources to make change. The reality is, though, the problem is such at a grandiose perspective that, we're chipping away at it. It's going to take time, but we can't do it in isolation. And I want to be very clear. We're committed to the work that, we're doing, but we're not the answer. We're one part of the solution. The solution lies in a much larger infrastructure and framework. Once again, thanks so much, everybody, for taking time, and I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. So good to see everybody. Thank you.